He laid on his bed for 39 days straight, getting up only to use the bathroom. He didn't brush his teeth or wash his face, and he didn't seem to care whether he ate. He used every waking minute to play games.
Electronic heroin, social brain damage, digital opium. These are just some of the terms China uses to describe the epidemic known as video game addiction, poisoning the youth across Asia. Now hold on, you're probably thinking, hey Clays, aren't you addicted to League of Legends? And to that I say, yeah, you got me, but I'm making this video because it takes one to know one. In East Asia, online gaming has become a significant social cultural activity among teenagers. This practice helps adolescents in these countries to establish friendships and serves as a crucial outlet for stress relief due to the intense academic pressures as well as the stress that comes with living in an ultra-competitive environment. But whilst online gaming serves some beneficial social functions, there are significant adverse effects on one's physical and mental health, leading to the deterioration of an entire generation.
The actual fuck are you doing? You're so fucking bad! Oh my fucking god! I just broke my glasses.
Which, well, greatly outweighs the positives it brings. In 2018, the World Health Organization officially acknowledged video game addiction as a recognized disorder and added it to its international classification of diseases known as the ICD. Now, whilst it's been almost 7 years since this decision was made, and Western health experts still debate on the legitimacy of the classification, governments in East Asia such as China and South Korea made their official decision on this issue much earlier. Actually, as early as 2008, and have been actively implementing preventative measures on making sure those who play video games don't get addicted. So then, why is it that despite all this, a meta-analysis conducted over 160 studies post the pandemic, which will play a part later in this video, reported that the prevalence of internet gaming disorder was as high as 57.5% in the general population across East Asia. So to answer this as clearly as I can, I've split it up into 3 smaller questions. Those being, why do so many individuals in Asia have gaming addictions? What are the harmful effects of this addiction? And finally, what are the governments doing to combat this, and have they worked? From what I've found, there is no singular cause of video game addiction. Rather, it's often a combination of 2 main reasons. One of these causes, proposed by Arizona State University, is something recognized as social phobia. And this phobia is directly connected to the addiction of a genre of games known as MMORPG, which stands for Massively Multiplayer Online Role-Playing Games. These games typically involve the creation of a highly customizable avatar representing the player within the game world. Players can select their avatar's gender, race such as human or elf, class like shaman or warrior, and even choose the faction they belong to, allowing for an expression of identity that may reflect the player's actual characteristics or an idealized version of themselves. Additionally, MMORPGs facilitate social interactions among players, offering various means of communication such as in-game texting and voice chat. Players can also organize into guilds which mirror real-life organizations, focusing on shared goals. World of Warcraft, one of the most popular MMORPGs, exemplifies these aspects, providing a platform where players can experience social dynamics in a controlled, idealized setting. This blend of personalization and social interactions makes MMORPGs particularly engaging and accessible for individuals who prefer virtual over social environments.
就是说这些孩子来打游戏排第一位的内心世界就是孤独。孤独。你了解他吗？他孤独。那么他想让谁陪伴他呢？哦，到网络世界去了。上知天文，在网上玩的，上知天文，下知地理，中不通人情。
As Burmeister and Leary 1995 identified, humans naturally seek to form and maintain significant, lasting, and meaningful social relationships. However, for individuals with severe social anxieties and phobias, fulfilling this need is particularly challenging. Social phobia manifests as irrational and deep-seated sense of inadequacy, often stemming from traumatic experiences in early life that contribute to low self-esteem and heightened sensitivity to potential embarrassment. Because of the competitive nature of countries in East Asia where parents and teachers shame and scold their children who fail to meet ridiculously high expectations. More about that in this video, by the way. This results in many socially anxious individuals which tend to avoid social interactions due to feelings of being undervalued and rejected. MMORPGs present an alternative avenue for forming social connections, offering a safer space for interaction that can be controlled in intensity and depth. While these games do not require interpersonal communication, they facilitate easy initiation and regulation of social exchanges. The virtual nature of these interactions minimizes the need to manage non-verbal cues, making them less intimidating. Interestingly, players often form attachments to their avatars, which can serve as a surrogate for human interaction and provide similar emotional benefits. And research involving brain imaging has shown that emotional investment in avatars can mirror the closeness felt with real-life friends and partners. Thus, whilst MMORPGs can be particularly valuable for those with social phobias, the ease of forming relationships online can make such individuals more susceptible to internet gaming disorder. This is supported by findings from Wei 2012, who noted a correlation between online gaming, social anxiety, and low self-esteem. Given the connection between internet gaming and avoiding anxiety-inducing social scenarios, those with higher levels of social phobia, commonly seen among teens in Asia, are at risk for developing video game addiction. This is further reinforced by research published by the Chinese University of Hong Kong, where they published a paper indicating correlation between levels of loneliness and social anxiety to time spent gaming online. This reminds me of a particular clip from the Japanese anime Welcome to the NHK, which perfectly depicts this, of what happens when someone with a social phobia meets their online friend in real life. The other reason, according to the Department of Psychology and Neuroscience at Dalhousie University, Canada, is escapism. The immersive qualities of video games can be attributed to their ability to provide a temporary retreat from the reality of life. This motivation for escapism often involves using video games as a tool to detach from real-world issues. I also already spoke about those real-world issues in East Asia super in depth in that past video, so I'll just briefly highlight it here. They include extremely long work weeks with little to no overtime pay, hyper-competitivity in the job market, resulting in high unemployment, despite having graduated from prestigious universities, and specifically in China, these past few years, an unstable economy with a housing crisis. Melioda 2020, The Role of Avoidance Coping and Escape Motives in Problematic Online Gaming, establishes that both escapism and avoidance coping are predictors of problem gaming, and they mediate the relationship between problematic gaming and various adverse psychological outcomes. Right now in South Korea, a significant majority of teens engage in online gaming, with a survey conducted by the Korea Creative Content Agency showing that 85% of teenagers play online games. Among these, 60.5% play PC games, while 70.4% are engaged in mobile gaming. On average, these adolescents spend about 90.9 minutes on PC games and 75.2 minutes on mobile games daily during weekdays, which increases to 158 minutes and 114.4 minutes, respectively, on weekends. Meanwhile, as of 2022, China has over 1 billion internet users. The China Internet Network Information Center reports that nearly 60% of all internet users in China play online games. The penetration of the internet and mobile technology into younger demographics is substantial, with heavy usage noted among children as young as 10 years old. Additionally, a significant portion of Chinese middle and high school students, about 80%, are also reported to engage in online gaming. And so, what effects does this have?
PC방에서 게임하고 있었는데 어떤 사람이 PC방에서 불이 났었대요. 불이 났었는데 보통 불이 나면 피해야 되잖아요. 나가야 되고. 근데 자기 캐릭터 그거 키워야 된다고 승급이라고 해야 된다고 안 나오고 불 나는데 계속 안 나오고 게임하고 있는 거예요.
A lot of the effects video game addiction has on these individuals in Asia actually creates a chicken or the egg dilemma, where studies have ultimately been inconclusive, only showing correlation, not causation. For instance, there's a strong correlation between video game addiction and having a decline in mental health, with symptoms such as social anxiety and depression being the main effects. However, it's also widely known that people with poor mental health tend to gravitate towards video games as a way to escape reality, and thus creating a cycle of worsening mental health, where it's hard to differentiate whether or not the individual's poor mental health, which possibly came from external factors such as being bullied, led to video game addiction, or if it was the video game addiction which caused the initial deterioration. Look, personally, I think it's a bit of both. And at the least, common sense would tell us that using video games as a way to escape the need for interpersonal relationships isn't going to improve one's social anxiety. Across East Asia, this has become extremely problematic, as many young men, and women as well, are choosing to live a life of being a social recluse. In Japan, they have a word for this known as hikikomori. Now, this has many detrimental effects on society, such as higher levels of unemployment, lower birth rate, additional burden on parents in their 60s still having to raise their children in their 30s, and actually has become such a big problem in South Korea that the government will now pay these socially recluse people 650,000 won, about 500 a month, just to go outside and essentially touch grass. This leads me to the next effect. Because so many of these addicts are, to put it lightly, lonely people, a lot of them develop a parasocial relationship with virtual online characters from video games. What's a parasocial relationship, you might ask? Well, this concept is what's known as a one-sided relationship. It's essentially someone or something who doesn't know you living in your mind rent-free. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, as we as humans all exhibit a sort of parasocial relationship towards actors, idols, YouTubers, streamers, and other celebrities. However, because we live in a world where greed tends to corrupt the gaming industry, game companies have exploited the human tendency to establish these one-sided relationships as a way to increase profits.
大悟です。FGO プレイヤーです。だいたい起きてるときは触ってるみたいな感じ。ご飯食べてるときも、お風呂と寝てるとき以外はだいたい、あと車運転してるとき以外は触ってると思いますけどね。多分700万ぐらいはそれ以上してると思いますけど、もうそれ以上はもうあんまり考えないようにしてますね。
Games like Fate Grand Order are known as gacha games and are designed in a way which preys on players' parasocial love and obsession over a character. To unlock these characters, however, players need to spend real money on a gambling-like system, such as opening loot boxes, just to have the chance to acquire them. A process commonly referred to as pulling for characters.
一个叫原神的游戏吧，但是就像我刚才讲的，他们告诉原神，就我那个朋友，他比如说3个月到6个月，他就花了大概快6000到1万左右。
And whilst the average gamer may spend a couple dollars here and there, addicts like the one you saw in that interview are known as whales in the gaming community, and will essentially pour their life savings into a game in hopes of unlocking said desired character. And well, you might be thinking, oh, this is just a self-discipline issue. And to that I say,
you're goddamn right.
Based on Gottfredson and Hirschi's self-control theory, empirical studies have found that lower self-control is associated with a higher likelihood of problematic or addictive internet behaviors among adolescents. This is a theory proposed in their book, A General Theory of Crime, that the lack of self-control is the core characteristic of criminal behavior. They argued that most criminal and deviant behaviors can be viewed as the pursuit of immediate and easy gratification or the seeking of short-term and fleeting pleasures by individuals. Consequently, those with lower self-control are more likely to engage disproportionately in criminal behaviors. Now, whilst gaming isn't breaking the law, many non-criminal behaviors such as gambling, drug abuse, alcoholism also fit the characterization of bringing immediate benefits but with high subsequent costs. This theoretical perspective provides a unified view for understanding various problem behaviors. It emphasizes that whether it's a crime in the legal sense or other types of violations or risky behaviors, they may all reflect deficits in an individual's self-control. This deficit makes it difficult for individuals to resist temptation, leading them to be more easily driven by short-term benefits whilst ignoring the long-term consequences of their actions. In recent years, the low self-control theory has begun to be applied to explain adolescent internet gaming addiction behaviors. Studies across different countries in Asia have found that low self-control has a direct correlation with problematic online gaming among adolescents. More specifically, having a gaming addiction and not seeing any of the immediate negative consequences of it, that is, the time being wasted could be better spent doing other activities, actually worsens the individual's ability of self-control. I mean, apparently I could have read 1,600 books by now. But this also helps us to come to somewhat of an understanding as to why someone would compulsively buy $70,000 worth of pixels in a game. And let's be real, if you're glued to your chair during a literal flood, you probably lack self-control. But at the end of the day, once again, whether or not those who have gaming addictions got addicted initially due to having low self-control, or if they started to lose their sense of self-control due to gaming, is still unclear. However, on a side note, reiterating the idea behind a general theory of crime, this explains where the creepy fat dude living in his mum's basement stereotype comes from. At this point, and with this much evidence, the stereotype is more just pattern recognition. And I know this fat person stereotype is just the perception that Western countries have on gamers, as when most of us think of Asian gamers, we probably think of someone like Faker. However, with obesity levels on the rise year after year in East Asia, all whilst being parallel to the level of video game addiction, it really seems that the average East Asian gamer is looking less like Faker and more like Insec. But as a Lee Sin player, he's still my goat. So as fun as it is, there's clearly a lot of objectively bad shit that comes with having a video game addiction. And thus, it begs the question, what's being done about it? Whether it's working towards stopping it completely or minimizing the negative effects. I want to focus on South Korea and China, as these two countries have taken the most steps towards harm reduction on video games, especially among children, and are often regarded as the leaders in this field. Let's start with China. If you remember at the start of the video, I mentioned that the Chinese government officially recognized gaming addiction in 2008. However, public sentiment towards video game addicts had been soured long before that decision, all the way back in 2002, when 4 minors aged between 13 and 14 burnt down an internet cafe in Beijing and killed 25 people in the process due to being banned from said internet cafe. This would be known as the Lanjisu fires. Remember what I said about low self-control and criminal behavior? Ultimately, these kind of acts would not even be one-offs, where withdrawal symptoms from gaming would be so bad that individuals would resort to physical violence. Due to this, the government would ultimately be tasked with ways to combat this addiction. Whilst the first recorded action taken against video games actually dates back to the 1980s, when an insane 130% import tax was slapped on video game consoles from Japan, under the preface of preventing imported foreign rot from infecting the minds of Chinese citizens. Many historians argue that this was more likely to be a political and economical play more than anything. The main argument for that case is because fake duplicates soon popped up, and China quickly built an entire video game industry via Nintendo clones. If anything, those import duties ironically paved the way for the domestic gaming companies that now dominate the country. The next time video games would be brought up in governmental policies would be after 2 decades, in 2000. China implemented a comprehensive ban not only on the import but also the local production and sale of video game consoles and arcade machines, at a time when these were the primary gaming platforms. The government maintained this prohibition for 15 years. Unsurprisingly, this console ban ultimately backfired. The restriction was intended to curb the potential negative impacts of gaming on the youth, but instead it spurred the growth of alternative gaming such as PC and mobile games, which the ban did not cover. This shift not only changed gaming habits, but also influenced the development of the gaming market in China, leading to a robust PC and mobile gaming industry. The ban on video game consoles in China inadvertently led to a significant economic dilemma. While developers in markets with official consoles could earn revenue selling games outright, China witnessed a proliferation of black market internet cafes dominated by pirated games. In this challenging environment, the viable business model for game companies shifted towards subscription-based games, such as World of Warcraft, like I previously mentioned, and eventually to freemium games. These freemium games often monetized through the aforementioned mechanisms, such as loot boxes, where players spend real money for the chance to win in-game items or unlock characters. This shift essentially steered the Chinese gaming industry towards embracing highly addictive gaming mechanics. Even today, an overwhelmingly majority of top games in China, 91 out of the top 100, feature loot boxes, despite laws aimed at curbing such practices. This persistence of loot boxes in games highlights the deep entrenchment of gambling-like mechanics in the gaming culture, which were, again, ironically, bolstered by the initial attempt to control the gaming industry through the console ban. Hell, even Minecraft is a gacha game in China. Jumping forward to 2007, China implemented a new law directly aimed at curbing video game addiction among minors. This approach began with a requirement for online games to collect real personal ID numbers from users to verify their age. This practice of age verification has since become commonplace for various online activities in China, as well as Korea, but I'll get to that later. Game developers were then tasked with identifying minors and implementing penalties for excessive gameplay. Scores were halved after 3 hours of continuous play, and were completely wiped after 5 hours. However, those measures sparked a cat and mouse dynamic where minors circumvented the restrictions either by using their parents' ID, playing games where scores were less relevant like shooting games and MOBAs, or switching between multiple games to avoid hitting the maximum playtime on any single game. Consequently, looking back, these rules also proved largely ineffective.
Security in this center resembles that of a prison. Gates and windows are locked. Barbed wire is fixed atop the high walls. People here are not allowed to have mobile devices. But there are no criminals here. This is a treatment center for internet addicts.
In 2009, China decided that hard labor camps was the answer to combat video game addiction. That's not a joke, by the way. Someone really saw kids who played games too much and thought, yeah, I think they need to go to prison. I do want to preface though, most of these were privately owned institutions, with only some being government funded. So credit to the Chinese authorities. Once it was revealed that these camps were not improving the addiction and was actually more harmful for the children's mental health, the government ensured that all these privately owned camps were immediately shut down. Look, while most of these were essentially Boy Scout camps, boot camps aimed at addressing video game addiction and laziness, which were relatively harmless and well-meaning, some effectively operated as private prisons. These more extreme facilities employed harsh methods, including force-feeding psychiatric medication, electroshock therapy, and physical abuse. Tragically, such severe measures led to dire outcomes, including the death of at least one child and an incident where a teenager killed their mother in a revenge fueled by the brutal treatment received at one of these camps. In 2019, the Chinese government imposed stringent regulations on gaming habits of minors, limiting them to 90 minutes of gameplay on weekdays and 3 hours on weekends. By 2021, these restrictions tightened further, eliminating weekday gaming altogether and reducing weekend play to just a single 60-minute session per day. These measures are among the strictest globally and were accompanied by monthly spending limits for minors ranging from approximately $25 USD to $50 USD. To enforce these new rules, the government developed a sophisticated real name verification system that game companies were required to integrate into their platforms. This system not only includes enforced ID verification, but for mobile games also extended to facial recognition to identify and penalize rule violators. The seriousness of the government's approach was further underscored by a 4-year period between 2018 and 2022, during which the release of new video games was drastically pulled back. Although, again, historians argue this was a policy created to mask the fact that pandemic lockdowns almost bankrupted these gaming companies. So take it with a grain of salt. This is backed by the fact that between August 2021 and March 2022, not a single game in China was released. This strategy of publicly and aggressively regulating an industry is not uncommon in China and serves as a clear signal of the government's priorities and intentions. The response from the gaming industry has been notably compliant, with around 200 Chinese gaming companies quickly pledging strict adherence to the new regulations and implementing the required controls. This level of government intervention reflects a deep commitment to controlling the gaming environment for minors, emphasizing the priority placed on curbing what it sees as excessive and harmful gaming behaviors among the youth. Since then, there hasn't been any new restrictions imposed, as China reports significant strides in combating gaming addiction among minors. According to a study done by China's official Gaming Industry Association, over 75% of minors now play fewer than 3 hours a week, aligning with the regulatory limits. The report further indicates a negligible percentage of minors engage in gaming for 6 hours or more, leading the association to claim that gaming addiction has largely been resolved among this demographic. The study also notes improvements in parental control over in-game spending, with reports of minors secretly buying in-game items dropping from 29% to 15%, almost half. Additionally, 86% of parents expressed satisfaction with the effects of the new gaming regulations on minors. Since then, enforcement measures have reportedly intensified, with all top 50 gaming companies now incorporating ID verification, 47 offering clear parental controls, and 20 implementing facial recognition to detect minors. Despite these positive reports, over 35% of parents anonymously admitted to helping their kids circumvent the restrictions using their IDs. This points to the ongoing cat and mouse chase in fully enforcing the regulations. Major gaming companies like Tencent have also reported substantial decreases in minor gaming activity. Tencent noticed an 88% reduction in total playtime by minors year on year, with minors now accounting for only 0.9% of time spent on a company's domestic titles. MiHoYo, NetEase, the second and third largest behind Tencent, also made similar claims. However, with a bit of critical thinking, you can probably deduce that the accuracy of these reports is difficult to verify and likely contains bias. Both gaming companies and industry associations have strong incentives to portray the regulations as a complete success, as a way to appease the government. Similarly, parents are not going to be inclined to admit that they are enabling their children to bypass the law, and minors are unlikely to snitch on themselves either. Therefore, whilst the official data presents a pretty picture of success, skepticism and caution in interpreting these claims are advisable, given the potential biases and underreporting involved. And considering Black Myth Wukong, China's first ever AAA game, just came out this year, time can only tell how well the restrictions truly perform. Just like China, Korea also requires all its citizens to go through ID verification to play games online. But that's not the only step Korea has taken to combat gaming addiction that mirrors China. In 2011, South Korea implemented the Shutdown Law, also known as the Cinderella Act, which restricted children under the age of 16 from accessing online computer games between midnight and 6 a.m. The law aimed to curb game addiction among youths, but faced significant enforcement challenges. Many children bypassed the restrictions by using adult identification numbers to access games during prohibited hours. Additionally, the Cinderella Act did not cover mobile and console games, leading to inconsistent regulation across different gaming platforms. Due to the difficulties in enforcing the law, certain drastic measures were taken, including complete bans on the games of some companies, such as Sony's PlayStation Network and Microsoft's Xbox Live, which restricted account access to adults only. However, unlike China, the effectiveness of their shutdown law was consistently questioned over the years. And by 2021, recognizing the limitations and the outdated nature of the law in an evolving digital landscape, the South Korean government decided to abolish the gaming curfew. As reported by the Korea Times, the decision was influenced by the growing prominence of mobile games, which were not covered by the curfew, leading to a decline in the law's effectiveness. The Ministries of Education, Culture and Family cited that they needed more of a modern approach that offers greater flexibility and control to both children and parents, moving away from the strict unilateral measures. This shift acknowledged the changing gaming environment and the challenges of enforcing broad, sweeping regulations in a technologically diverse and rapidly advancing landscape. Currently now, the only two nations in the world employing such tactics against video game addiction is China and Vietnam, where since 2011 the latter has a ban on all online gaming activity between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. Interestingly, to combat this addiction among youth, the South Korean government continues to push something China decided to cut out long ago. Children between 13 to 19 who are identified as being addicts by their schools and parents are made to go to addiction camp. However, these being all fully government funded, operate in a much safer manner for teens. Instead of physical punishment and hard labor, according to the Rob Loack documentary, kids in the camps are encouraged to play outside with one another, learn personal hygiene like taking daily showers, read books, and set goals for the future. These camps are also considered part of education, and thus doesn't count as absenteeism towards normal schooling. In my personal opinion, I think this is much better compared to draconian laws restricting freedom, as I believe the onus should always be on the parents to teach and take responsibility for their children. However, if you want to understand the reason behind the cheap and greedy Chinese person stereotype, you're going to want to go and watch this video about why so many Chinese people often seem selfish. Thank you so much for sticking around until the end. Please let me know your thoughts, as I always read and reply to your comments. And as always, if you're eating right now, I hope you're having a wonderful meal. I'll see you in the next one.